Okay, and this is reading example 7. Yet another different reading. For many of you, you might notice that this reading looks a little bit like the Celtic cross reading. It's kind of the center cross without the 4 cards along the side. Many of you are noticing that. This reading actually functions a little bit like the Celtic cross reading, in the sense that you can kind of look into the future a little bit using this reading. And you can look into the future using this reading in much the same way that the large 12 card reading that some of our new Masters Club members get every month. They get the 12 card reading. In this reading, you can read for a year, you can read for a season, you can read for a month, you can read for a week, you can even read for a day if you wanted to. And all you really need to do in order to do the reading that way is you're going to basically envision the outer cards sort of like a clock that sort of moves you through a cycle of time, whatever time cycle you determine you are looking at. So we had some questions that really dealt with issues of timing and what happens next and what's supposed to happen next come in this reading, so this week. So I really wanted to do a reading that focused on that. So I'll lead you through it right now. I actually did this reading with a 6-month time cycle in mind. So you can think of each card in here as representing something like 1.5 months or 45 days. So each of the little clocks around the edge there are about 45 days worth of time in a predictive sense. And what you are going to notice, which is the main difference between this reading and a reading you've done in a Celtic cross spread, is rather than give you a lot of background information about the past here, this talks about the present and then moving forward. So the present is always the time where we come to the most innermost consciousness enough to actually have a reading or receive a reading or do a reading. So in a sense, we put this card that represents the present up at the same position that you would find it in the Celtic cross spread, up at the top there. So here we've got the Queen of Swords reversed as the present card. And the thing about it being in that position there, which is also good in this idea of how to do this time cycle reading, is you can also correlate the time cycle reading to different seasons of the year, in a way, even if you're not reading for a year. So the card at the top there in the present position is sort of like the card of the midwinter before the rebirth of spring, only you can have a midwinter of a 6-month period. And that's, what I do when I'm reading for a different period of time other than a year, is I count that card at the top as the northern energy card, which does have to do with winter. It also has to do with sword energy and air and communicating energy. But the other thing that the card at the top there in the quote-unquote winter or quote-unquote north position does is that energy of that time of a cycle is the energy of the innermost time of year. In the midwinter, all the seeds are buried underground. We come more conscious as humans. We tell each other stories. We think about planning for the spring and the summer and the year ahead of us. And so you can have sort of a midwinter or a quote-unquote northern air sign period of any year, really, and or any month period. And if you're doing any sort of cycle of time that is less than a year, what I recommend you doing is basically starting your reading at the midwinter point up at the top there, because then you have another really easy way of remembering how to read this reading that's available to you. So you just then go around the clock of the reading. So the present card of the winter time, which is now, when you're being a person who's checking in with their insight, and intuition is that midwinter card. So in that reading, the now card is the Queen of Swords reversed. And then the springtime of the issue is the card that you see at 3 o'clock. And then the summertime of the period that you're reading for, now this may or may not be actually the summertime, but it's the time sort of in the middle of the time cycle that you're reading for, that everything is going to come to its like fullest blossoming, in a sense, just like the summertime of the year would see plants and trees and flowers in their fullest, usually in the summer. And then the autumn card, or the fall card there at 9 o'clock, represents what's going to happen just about at the ending period of the time cycle that you're reading for. And that's often a card of sort of West energies, of gathering wisdom and learning lessons and taking in the entire experience that you've just been through. And then the central two cards you see over there on the right-hand side of this screen, the central two cards are actually the Ace of Wands reversed, crossed by the Ace of Pentacles. And we're reading with Ciro Marchetti's. I've got to figure out how he pronounces his name soon. He's a very well-known deck artist, and this is his tarot deck that's called the Gilded Tarot. I'll show you some in-close pictures of this tarot deck now as we go through this reading for Querent 7. So basically, the root issue here, the You and For All That You Are card in the center there, and the crossing card, really says, we really need to feel some sort of spark, some sort of ignition of creativity and passion. And we feel like we could have that, but the card of the Ace of Wands that would provide that igniting spark is reversed. The energy of that card is reversed, meaning that it's not manifesting fully in our life. Why can't we just turn the ignition on fully with this issue? And the crossing card suggests that it has something to do with an Ace of Pentacles issue, which is very often a core financial opportunity, or just the physical means of doing the creative work that you envision yourself doing. And as soon as you can cross that bridge of really getting the means and the nuts and bolts of the finances figured out, this is a go. It looks really positive. Like, I very, very rarely see two aces especially two aces, one right on top of the other in the central, cards of the reading, slap bang in the middle of the reading. To have two aces show up close together there is actually quite special, of course, because there's only 4 aces in the entire 78 card deck. So this reading is all about new ideas and new beginnings in a lot of ways. And in order to really turn on the ignition, the spark, the fire energy, which is what needs to happen at the central core of this reading, that's what we're reading about. We're actually we're reading about turning on the ignition, really, on your ideas. And, that is reversed right now. So it's a little bit tricky to get a good read on this for you until we get it the right way up. And I think sorting out and solidifying the actual physical, financial piece of that is what it's going to take in order to get that inspiration clearly and solidly upright and ignited for you. So let's go up to the central card and then the springtime card. So this is sort of for the next 6 months. What we see is the Queen of Swords upright there. Now she's reversed in the present, which means that a clear but compassionate, and I say compassionate because this is the Queen of Swords, and she looks compassionate to me even though she's holding a sword. She's going to deliver her communication when she's upright with compassion and conscience and without guilt playing and anything else that might interfere with a clear insight for yourself in your own minds. So what we want to do is we want to bring her energy upright. So a focus on compassionate mastery of communication is really what is on your plate right now, not only for how you communicate with others, but how you communicate about this issue to yourself. So getting clarity is really, really important here in the present. Now, in the near future, you see the major arcana card of the Tower come up. And this card is all about powerful destruction and change. It's not always a negative thing. A lot of the time, the Tower card experience, the archetypal experience of destruction, which this card represents, is really necessary in order to move forward. So if you want to implement some of the changes you're thinking about, the time for action, and actually the time for a destruction of sorts, and destruction doesn't necessarily have to be negative, is very, very soon in this 6-month time span. It's sort of first up, we have destruction. and that's really what we see here. And then in the summertime of the reading, so in the middle of the reading here, around the 90-day mark or so, in the 180-day span that I was reading for, we have the Page of Cups reversed. And after you've done that big destruction, the task there that the Page of Cups suggests is sort of a re-apprenticing to the Suit of Cups, the suit of emotions, a refocusing on learning how to be an emotionally more harmonized individual, an emotionally balanced individual. But he was reversed, so it might be work to turn that card upright as well. And in fact, if you noticed at the beginning of the reading, let me just show this to you again, we've got the Queen of Swords reversed, the Tower is upright, the Ace of Pentacles is upright, but all of the other cards in this reading, and this is a 6-card reading, 4 of the cards here are reversed. Now, usually when we have this many reversed cards, because I've been talking about turning the energies upright on all of these reversed cards, and you've heard me say that a lot now in this reading, when we have this many reversals, when there's a question up like how likely is something to happen within the next 6-month period, and all of the cards come up as reversed, what I actually feel like saying is not very likely in the next 6 months, but here's the work you need to do if that's the ambition. And the work to do is sort of the prescription of how to turn these cards, these 4 reverse cards, the right way up. So that being said, the Moon, of course, is reversed as well. And the Moon is another major arcana card, and we've had a couple of major arcana cards here. We've had the Tower, and we've had 2 aces. So this very powerfully suggests a very major change, a very majorly impactful life change coming up. And the Moon, the Autumn, is really a card of really facing your fears in a deeper way than an encounter with the Devil card or the Death card would represent. The Moon is really the deep, dark, lurking boogeyman fears that eat at you in dreams and things. The stuff that you're really concerned about. And that's the stuff that the autumn of this 6-month period is going to want to bring up for you. So in other words, you have to face some real fears in order to make your vision that you had the idea of go. And the idea of what it takes to make something go is actually represented there by the little mechanical clock structure underneath the hourglass shape that we see the Moon here in the Gilded Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. And we're not really sure what's going to happen with all those animals down the front of the card, are we? It looks like they might interfere with the mechanism somehow. The idea of there being a ghost in the machine as a saying comes to mind, a ghost in the machine. And what that can really feel like is that even though everything looks like it should work like clockwork, and there's no obvious reason why something shouldn't go, there's these pesky, haunting sort of energies that our deepest fears can bring up for us. And And that's really the stuff that you really need to confront and look after. And so that's really the energy that's happening here in the autumn, quote unquote, autumn time of this reading. And that's the reading. So it's like through this reading, it kind of looks like a clock, right? You can kind of give a lot of predictive information through doing a reading like this. And I would love for you guys to start playing with this reading, just to kind of get a little monthly forecast for yourself, or a weekly forecast, or even a forecast on a longer period of time, like a year. This can be an incredibly valuable reading to add to your backpack. So real quick at the end of the reading, I almost forgot to do this. I wanted to give you an affirmation, and rather than giving you 4 affirmations for all 4 of the reversed cards, I'm actually going to give you the central focus cards affirmation, and the affirmation for the card of the Tower. Because that is what I believe is going to best benefit you. So first of all, let's do the affirmation of the Tower for you, because I'm right there in the book. And again, these affirmations that I'm doing this week are from Journey Through the Gaian Tarot by Joanna Powell Colbert, and I just find them incredibly powerful, incredibly peaceful and harmonizing affirmations to work with. She's done a stellar job of her affirmations in this book. So her affirmation for the Tower card that you might want to write down or repeat as needed as you go into sort of the springtime season of this next 6-month period, where there seems to be a massive destructive change that could possibly be a very good idea for you to get to the other side of. The affirmation there is, I am transformed and liberated by my acceptance of profound change. I am transformed and liberated by my acceptance of profound change. And then I'm going to also give you the affirmations for those aces, because the aces are what we really need to focus on in this reading overall. The affirmation that Joanna has for the Ace of Wands, which we need to bring upright, is I am ablaze with creativity and passion. And I love that she uses the exact same 2 favorite words for the suit of fire that I like to use for the suit of fire, the suit of wands, and those 2 words are creativity and passion. I am ablaze with creativity and passion. And finally, an affirmation for the Ace of Earth for you. I take root in the physical world. I take root in the physical world. Beautiful affirmations there from Joanna Powell Colbert to finish our session here today.